my name is Dianne Knight. This is my Grandma Lee, and I'm going to do the World War II generations interview with her. Grandma, if you would just say your full name with your maiden name and your place and your birth, and then we'll start.
My name is Jessie Lee. Merrill is my maiden name at Howard. I was born in 1922 in a very small town in North Louisiana, but I grew up in Shreveport, Louisiana. It's not too small. Until I moved here, and that's where I was during the Depression and during World War II.
So when we're talking about all that, it's going to be in
Shreveport, Louisiana, right.
Okay. Thank you. And, okay, we're going to go do it. I'm going to ask you questions, and you can feel free to answer them like however you want and stuff. Let me get. Okay. If you could just talk to me about your childhood days during the 1930s, mention some hardships, some memories of like funny experiences, some scenes that you witnessed in your neighborhood, and a memory that most stands out. I'll mention these to you again.
All right. Okay, growing up, before the Depression, it was just carefree, just playing, all the kids in the neighborhood playing out in the streets, not worrying about the traffic. At night, playing under the street lights, skating on the streets. Let's see, life was gay, just happy as just all the kids in the neighborhood getting together and playing. Walking to school, then trying to remember having programs at school, and May Day, Oh, and then we had a centennial in Shreveport where all the schools in the city participated in a big football stadium out, and Shreveport was founded by Captain Shreve on the Red River, so all the little school children that didn't have any other part formed a river. I have a cousin that just laughs about us being in this river, this Red River. We had this gauzy type dress. I guess it was just all girls because it was reddish color like this old Red River, and we just wound from one end of the football field to the other, and this river just flowing through. And anyway, and of course there were Indians and the founding of Shreveport, because this was its 100th anniversary. And high school was just fun, but this was during the Depression then when we went to high school. So really, there wasn't anything real. We had a football team, and girls could not play basketball in Louisiana for a long. It was rules against girls playing basketball. I don't know why until I was out of high school. But football was always big attraction, because there wasn't an awful lot of entertainment in Shreveport. Let's see, we had downtown theaters, and we could ride to town on the trolley, the streetcar and the trolley for a dime, and go to the movie for a dime. So and carry a nickel to buy a Coke or something for 25 cents. We could have and we'd see the movie 2 or 3 times. But anyway, the Depression was just really bad. A lot of nobody had jobs, and I don't know how. A lot of people got by. Well, I've told you, Diane, about the free food. That I didn't know about it because my mother and daddy had a little bit of money in the bank. I mean, precious little, but they would get a few dollars a week out of the bank to buy groceries. So I never knew that everybody didn't have enough to eat, because I was only 8, 9, 10 years old. But later, when I was working with a lady who had found out we had both gone to the same high school, but she was a few years older than I, she said, "Didn't you used to go to Fair Park and stand in line and get food?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Oh, she would go and get food for her family. A little bag of dry beans and a little bag of coffee and a little bit of sugar and a little bit of flour and a little bit of meal. And that would be what they had to eat. So I guess it was really bad on a lot of people. A lot of my relatives lived on farms, kind of in the country, in real small towns, and they had cows and chickens and gardens, and so I really didn't experience hunger or any other anybody that I knew that got hungry. But let's see then. When that basically is the Depression, I guess. The Depression began to be over about my father was out of work for 2 or 3 years, and then he went back to work like maybe in 1933 or 4, after when Rosa was elected, he passed the 8-hour law. Had Congress pass that 8 men would only work. And we're talking men. Women didn't do it. There were not a lot of women workers in those days. Few, like in department stores maybe, or dime stores. We called them 5 and dime stores, Woolworths and presses and clerks. But anyway, my dad got to go back to work because instead of men having to work 12 hours a day, they could only work 8. And if they worked over 8 hours, they got time and a half. So he got hired back at the same job he had before he was let go for 2 or 3 years. And then, although I've talked about wearing hand-me-down clothes, if somebody, a cousin older than I, my mother would make over dresses, and I'd have one pair of shoes for school for a whole year. And if they began to wear out, got a hole in the bottom, we put cardboard in them. And I can't tell you how many people I've talked to said, yeah, we put cardboard in our shoes. And then even after I didn't have to put cardboard in my shoes, I got one pair of shoes when school started, and wore those for the whole 9 months. And I had a pair of Sunday shoes that I could, and I always got them big enough so they'd last a year. And really, high school was just wonderful. We weren't deprived. I don't know. I'm sure larger cities had a lot more people in need, maybe. I don't know. We just made it fine in our little old town.
So it was
then when the war began. Yeah. Let's see now. Then I graduated high school in '39, and went to college 2 years. And when basically the Depression was over by then.
So it was good then that you were in a smaller town. You think that helped you get through it, not as bad?
I think so.
That's good.
Didn't see a lot of suffering.
But do you have a memory that stands out the most from during the Depression?
During the Depression? I don't think I do.
Because you didn't have it like
I
that.
was so young, maybe.
Oh yeah, that too. Well, I'm glad you didn't have it bad though. That makes me happy. All right. Could you tell me what you were doing on December 7th, 1941?
Yes, that's my dad's birthday. So we were at my mother and father's house, and I still live with them, having ice cream and cake, and there were some relatives there. And then we heard it. We were just shocked and just almost dumbfounded. Just could not believe that was happening, that it happened. And they kind of began talking about it, the men. Well, what's going to happen? And my father had been in World War I. He'd been wounded in France. And he said, well, there'll be a war. We'll be going to war. And that was such a shock. But that's where I was.
Wow.
On December 7th.
What a birthday. I can't imagine that. Okay, well then, obviously, then we went into war. So now I'm going to ask you questions about your wartime experience. We've already covered where you were living the whole time you were living in Shreveport, right? Between 1941 and 1946?
Yes. Well, actually, I married in 42.
Oh.
And I married a man whom I had met when I worked at the city court. He was a policeman. And he had also been in the Navy right after graduating from high school. But then this was quite a few years later. But because they, all branches of the service, particularly the Navy, asked for, they recruited men in police work to be shore patrol, and that's, in the Navy, that's what military police in the Army is. They're policemen, Navy policemen. And because he had served 4 years in the Navy and had a little bit of a rank, and then had 6 or 8 years police experience, he went back into the Navy to be a shore patrol, which is what he was. So therefore, I joined him. And we were stationed in Gulfport, Mississippi. And there was just the town. That little big town was just overrun, with sailors. There was something in the Navy called Seabees. This was meant construction battalion, and these men, they recruited these men and gave them kind of they were not made officers, but gave them a rank because of their construction experience to go to the Pacific and build air bases, landing strips, housing for the because for the war in the Pacific, for all these little islands where we fought just island by island to push Japan back. And by the way, when everybody that remembers the war remembers what was called the Death March on Bataan in the Philippines, General MacArthur was commander. I don't know if he was a general then, but the Japanese captured the Philippines. Of course, we occupied the Philippines. We were it was kind of a protectorate, and we did have army there. But they marched. They captured all of our just surprise attack, I guess. But they marched our men. And this is very poignant to me because we lived right next door to a lady whose husband was stationed in the Philippines. And she wasn't there with him. She would join him. He was regular Army, full-time career Army man. But they were marched, I don't know how many miles by the Japanese, and beaten and starved, and upward of almost half of them died on this march. It was called the Death March. Real cruel, real cruel. I guess something like that just made us patriotic and want to, win the war. And everybody began enlisting, to do their part. All young men were anxious to be in one of the branches of service to protect America. But but anyway, everybody is famous. MacArthur said, "I will return." And of course, after we began capturing the islands that the Japanese occupied and took in the Pacific, there were some horrible experiences in the Pacific. You may have heard of the Japanese suicide bombers. The planes would just dive, into the ship, and we had. Anyway, I was talking about the Bataan Death March. That's one of the most poignant things that, and then that as well as the people who were killed in that surprise attack in Pearl Harbor.
Right.
It was pretty terrible. Did you ask me something about? You asked me where was I on Pearl Harbor Day.
Right.
But and then where I lived during until 46, until really 45, I guess, when my husband got out of the Navy after Japan surrendered in 45. I worked I didn't work in a plant, but in an office in Gulfport. There was an Air Force base there, as well as Navy base and Army base. There was just so much military there. But B-29s and B-17s were repaired at this Air Force base, and for the supplies, for all the parts necessary for the repairs on the planes, we kept records of all those parts. So that I worked in, it was called Sub-Depot Supply, but that's the way they pronounce depot in the Army, I guess, in the Air Force. I worked there the whole time my husband was in the Show Patrol until we actually, when Germany and Japan surrendered, we were in San Antonio, Texas. We had just the little, his little Show Patrol unit had been sent to San Antonio. And that's where I was then when the war was over, and it was a joyful time because he was getting out of the service and we could go back to Shreveport.
Was your husband the only one family member you had in the
only
military?
relative, yes. But let me see. In thinking about the war and the effect it had on our lives, even before I married, and then of course all during the war. My being 19, being 20, when Pearl Harbor happened, and almost 20, all the young men my age that I remembered from high school and the young men in my church were all gone to the war.
Mm-hmm.
And not many, but a lot of them were killed in the war. And that's the way I was affected. It was sad. In our church, everybody that was in the service, their names were on a huge board out in the vestibule, and when someone was killed, they put a star by his name. And you first place when you walked in and saw all those young men that were somewhere fighting, and then when stars went up and some had been killed. And the same thing with boys that I had gone to high school with who were killed in the service. And one young man that I had dated didn't live in Shreveport, but he was a prisoner of war. And those kind of things means that, what didn't Sherman say, war is hell?
Yeah.
It was a sad time, real sad. Mm-hmm. And about rationing, you asked me about rationing?
Yeah.
We had to have stamps to buy coffee and sugar and butter or margarine and even shoes. You had, I think, one stamp a year, for shoes. And also, gasoline was rationed. You had coupons to buy gasoline and tires if you had a car. And that was just so that there would be enough supplies to keep the army
mm-hmm.
going, food and clothes for them. And, I mentioned to you that since I've been in Georgia, I have quite a few friends my age that worked at Lockheed during the war.
Oh, yeah.
And there were women in the service, but not like it is now. There were. Mm-hmm. Let's see, any other memory?
How about
you asked me
about President Roosevelt or war heroes?
Okay. Because of Roosevelt, my daddy was out of work for several years, and he was hired back at the same place he had been because of the 8-hour day. So really, I think Roosevelt was a hero for pulling us out of that depression. Mm-hmm. War heroes, I don't think so. The men who raised the flag on Iwo Jima, and I think everybody's favorite, that was one of the little islands that we had just fought, and these Japanese would be in, I guess, kind of like, almost like in caves, and when we would land on this island, they'd just mow us down, and so many would be killed. But these men that risked their lives to climb up on the top of a little Mount Suribachi, it's called, on this island, to plant the flag in this, those men, talking about war bonds, they went on a war bond tour then, and my husband, they came, I guess it was either Gulfport or San Antonio. I think it was in San Antonio. These men who had raised the flag on Iwo Jima at the risk of their lives. We're going boosting people to buy the war bonds. And my husband they autographed, because my husband was Show Patrol and kind of a crowd control, I guess. We have this big poster of that flag raising on Iwo Jima, and all these men signed it. And I think there's only one of them still living now. But they were heroes.
Yeah.
But no one in my family. It's odd. At my age, I had cousins in the service, but well, none of them didn't. Were. I don't even think they even had to go overseas. Come to think of it, I really don't think they did.
Where were you when the atomic bomb was dropped?
And I was in San Antonio. I was in San Antonio expecting a little baby, and it really the import didn't soak in. I didn't know. I don't know if they let the public know the seriousness of
The atomic bomb.
The damage that was done. We know now, but at the time, well, we know it was bad. We knew it was bad at the time, but not as we didn't realize how much, how just really cruel it was. But it had to be. I feel it had to be to end the war because Japan was ready to. Well, they were almost winning. You know, we had lost so many men, so many ships, and so many planes in the Pacific, and it saved a lot of lives in the long run.
So have you changed your opinion about that since then?
Well, at the time, you know, I just thought it was just another bomb. I'm sorry to be so uninformed about it at the time. But now I think I think it was necessary. But I sure hope it never has happened again.
Oh, of course not.
Yes.
Yeah. You've already given me so many details and so many memories, but what is like your most vivid war-related memory?
I think the young men that I knew that were killed, you know, hearing that, you know, when they were killed in action, that I believe touched me the most. Yeah, that's, I still can feel that, you know?
Yeah.
It's just not, it seems so unnecessary.
Yeah,
you know.
it is.
But, and glad when it was over. Relief, so much relief, you know, when it was finally over.
Well, then how did you celebrate VE and VJ days?
Well, you know, like I told you, I was busy having a baby.
Oh, yeah.
And it was real sad that when Roosevelt died, it was just, you know. But, yeah, I didn't get to go see the parades in San Antonio. It meant, I guess I celebrated because it meant my husband could get out of the service and we could go back to Shreveport to live.
Okay.
Carry a little baby.
Okay. Well, I think that's all. Do you have anything else you'd like to say?
Well, it's interesting to remember all this. I probably wouldn't have thought about it if you hadn't reminded me to remember. It was a sad time, you know, like in those maneuvers. Let's see, it was after Pearl Harbor, but just knowing that those young men were going to be going to war.
Yeah.
You know, it's just really.
I can't imagine that
something
myself.
I hope never happens again. I really do. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Grandma.
Well,
I appreciate it.
You're just welcome. I didn't do anything great for the
Yes,
war
you did.
effort.
You had my family.
Yeah.
So, that's good.
Okay.
And you're here to tell us about it now and to teach us and to inform us. And that's very important. That's what this is about. So, okay. Thank you.
Have you turned it off yet?